Hello everyone, my name is Helmalia Dewi, and today I will be presenting my topic entitled Linguistic Variation in Sociolinguistics. This topic is part of sociolinguistics, which is a branch of linguistics that studies how language is used in society. In this presentation, I will explain the theoretical background of linguistic variation, starting from the concept of speech community, then moving to the definition, types, and forms of linguistic variation. I will also include several journal-based case studies to strengthen the analysis and show how linguistic variation appears in real-life language use. Next slide is introduction. Language isn't only a system of grammar and vocabulary, but also a social tool used by people in daily life. Because people come from different social backgrounds and live in different environments, language use also becomes different. This is why sociolinguistics is important. Sociolinguistics help us understand why people speak differently even when they use the same language. One of the key topics in sociolinguistics is linguistic variation, which explains how and why language changes depending on social factors, context, and situation. This presentation focuses on that concept. Next slide is speech community. Before discussing linguistic variation, we must first understand the concept of speech community because linguistic variation always occurs within a speech community. A speech community is a group of people who share common language norms. They may not speak exactly the same way, but they understand what kind of language is appropriate in certain situations. For example, students at the university may speak casually with friends, but they know how to speak formally to lecturers. This shared understanding shows that they belong to the same speech community. Next slide is definition of speech community. According to the Dictionary of Linguistics, a speech community is a group of people who use the same language or dialect and are able to communicate with each other. Fishman emphasizes that a speech community is formed through intensive communication. This means that members of a speech community interact frequently with one another. Labov, on the other hand, explains that a speech community is defined by shared norms, not by identical language use. This means people can speak differently but still belong to the same speech community as long as they share the same language values. Next slide is other theoretical views. Other linguists have also contributed to the definition of speech community. Hockett defines a speech community based on linguistic uniques, meaning speakers of the same language form one community. However, this view is limited because one language can have many varieties. Gumpers then argues that interaction within a group is more important than language similarity. Sheffield later adds that a speech community must share spatial, cultural, and temporal unity. This shows that speech community isn't only about language, but also about social and cultural context. Next slide is Bagioni's view. Bagioni and his colleagues criticize earlier definitions because they see speakers as passive language users. They propose a new view of speech community as a linguistic research management unit. In this view, speakers actively manage language. They choose how to speak based on social, psychological, and cultural considerations. This idea is important because it connects speech community directly to linguistic variation. Next slide is transition to linguistic variation. From the concept of speech community, we can see that even though people share norms, they still use language differently. These differences are what we call linguistic variation. Therefore, linguistic variation explains how diversity in language use exists within the same speech community. Next slide is definition of linguistic variation. Linguistic variation is one of the most important concepts in sociolinguistics. It opposes the structuralist view proposed by Saussure, which assumes that language has only one correct form. In reality, people don't speak the same way in all situations. Language varies naturally depending on social context, speaker identity, and communication goals. Next slide is Labov views. Labov strongly emphasizes that language cannot be studied without society. According to him, sociolinguistics is linguistics itself because language exists only through social use. He argues that variation isn't only a mistake or deviation, but a natural characteristic of language. This idea is fundamental in understanding linguistic variation. Next slide is levels of variation. Linguistic variation occurs at all levels of language. At the phonetic level, variation appears in pronunciation. At the morphological level, variation appears in word formation. At the syntactic level, variation appears in a sentence structure. And at the lexical level, variation appears in vocabulary choice. These levels show that variation affects the entire language system. Next slide is types of variation, according to Gadet. Now, I will explain the types of linguistic variation based on the classification proposed by Francois Gadet. Gadet divides linguistic variation into two main categories. The first one is variation according to the user, and the second one is variation according to use. This classification is very important in sociolinguistics because it helps us understand whether language differences are caused by who is speaking or how language is being used. Variation according to the user focuses on the identity of the speaker, such as their age, social class, and geographical background. Meanwhile, variation according to use focuses on the situation, context, and purpose of communication. By using this classification, sociolinguistics can analyze language variation in a more systematic and structured way, rather than seeing variation as random or accidental. Next slide is variation according to user. Variation according to the user refers to differences in language use that are influenced by the characteristics of the speaker. This type of variation includes diachronic variation, diatophic variation, and diastratic variation. Each of these explains how language changes or differs because of time, place, and social factors. Diachronic variation shows how language changes across generations. Diatopic variation shows how language differs from one region to another. Diastratic variation shows how language reflects social background such as education, profession, age, and gender. And these variations prove that language is closely connected to social identity and social structure. Next slide is variation according to use. Variation according to use is also known as diaphasic variation. This type of variation depends on the situation or context in which language is used. Speakers don't speak in the same way in all situations. For example, the way someone speaks in a classroom presentation is different from how they speak with close friends. According to Mirahu, this variation results in different language registers. There are four main registers. The first one is sustained register. Sustained register is used in formal, academic, or official situations such as speeches or research presentations. The second one is the standard register. It's used in everyday communication and is socially acceptable in most situations. The third one is familiar register. It's used with friends and family and sounds more relaxed. And the last one is vulgar register. Includes taboo or offensive expressions and is usually restricted to very informal contexts. This shows that speakers actively choose language based on context. Next slide is diamesic variation. Diamesic variation refers to differences between spoken language and written language. Spoken language is usually spontaneous, interactive, and supported by gestures, facial expressions, and intonation. Because of this, spoken language often contains repetitions, pauses, and incomplete sentences. Written language, on the other hand, is more plain and structured. Readers usually have time to revise their language, so written texts follow grammatical rules more strictly. According to Gadet, This distinction is not only technical but also conceptual. It affects how meaning is organized and delivered. This shows that the communication channel strongly influences language form. Next slide is forms of variation. Linguistic variation appears in different forms, including phonetic, lexical, and syntactic variation. The first one is phonetic variation. It refers to differences in pronunciation, such as accents or sound changes. The second one is lexical variation. Refers to differences in word choice, where different words are used to express the same meaning. The third one is syntactic variation. Refers to differences in sentence structure. These forms of variation show that language adapts to social context, speaker identity, and communication needs. They also demonstrate that variation affects all aspects of language, not just pronunciation or vocabulary. Next slide is case study 1 from Labov 1966. Now, I will discuss a classic case study in sociolinguistics conducted by William Labov in 1966. Labov studied the pronunciation of the R sound in New York City by observing employees in 3 department stores that represented different social classes. He asked questions designed to elicit words containing the R sound, such as fourth and floor. The results showed that employees from higher status stores pronounced the R sound more frequently, especially in careful speech. This indicates that pronunciation is influenced by social class. This study clearly demonstrates diastratic variation, where language reflects social stratification. It also shows that speakers adjust their language depending on social expectations. Now, I will explain the analysis of Labov study. First, this study clearly shows that language reflects social class. The pronunciation of the R sound wasn't used randomly. Speakers from higher social classes pronounce the R sound more frequently, while speakers from lower social classes tend to drop it. This means that pronunciation can function as a marker of social status. Second, Lebov's findings prove that linguistic variation is systematic. The differences in pronunciation follow by clear social patterns related to class and formality. This shows that variation isn't caused by individual mistakes or lack of knowledge, but by structural social factors. Finally, this study strongly supports sociolinguistic theory. It confirms Labov's argument that language must be studied within its social context. The results demonstrate that linguistic variation is an essential part of how language operates in society, not a deviation from the norm. Because of this, Labov's study is considered one of the most important pieces of evidence in sociolinguistics. And in conclusion, linguistic variation is a central and unavoidable aspect of language. Language varies because society itself is diverse and constantly changing. Through the concept of speech community, we learn that people share norms but still use language differently. Theories of linguistic variation explain how differences in time, place, and social background, situation, and communication channel influence languages. The case study by Labov proves that linguistic variation is systematic and socially meaningful. It supports the idea that variation isn't an error, but a natural and essential feature of language. I hope this presentation has helped you understand how language varies and why these variations are important in studying society and communication. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and I apologize if there are any shortcomings such as mispronunciations or grammatical mistakes.